Hold on, I screwed up the intro.
Based store chain Quebec-based store chain Simons have just released a new project. It's called All is Beauty. The video tells the story of Jennifer and her final days before receiving medical assistance and dying. We see her surrounded by loved ones, connecting with nature, drawing lines in the sand with a stick as waves rush
beautiful.
over, all while speaking frankly about her decision.
This is from the ad. Beautiful
Even
music,
now,
like Enya.
as I seek help to end my life, with all the pain, and in these final moments, there is still so much beauty.
I mean, they also ripped it off of
You just
American
have to
Beauty.
be brave enough to see it.
Brave enough to see it.
The company says this is not a commercial campaign, but that they wanted to share her touching
not a
story.
commercial campaign,
Peter
but
Simons is the chief merchant at Simons,
Peter
and
Simons,
he joins
chief
us
merchant.
now to tell us more about the project.
Listen.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Why'd you do
Nice
it?
to have you with us. People might be surprised to see a company like yours do a project like this. What was the thinking behind it?
Listen to this.
We really felt after everything we've been through in the last 2 years and everyone's been through, we wanted and we felt that maybe it would resonate more to do a project that's less commercially oriented and more focused on inspiration and values that we hold dear at Simons. And after meeting Jennifer and finding her inspirational, we wanted to tell her story because we felt it was worthwhile and important and inspiration we've been through in the last.
Verbal diarrhea.
What was the thinking behind it?
We really felt after everything we've been through in the last 2 years.
We really felt like after everything we've been through in the last 2 years, we should make a promotional video about euthanasia. Medical assistance in dying is the euphemism. We really felt that after 2 years of soul-crushing financial devastation, isolation, stress, anxiety, we really felt compelled to tell the story of one woman's brave journey to end her own life. We really felt I'm trying to record the actual audio for this because I have a feeling this might not be online for much longer. We really felt that we should go tell the story of euthanasia. After 2 years of psychological devastation, economic devastation, social devastation, spiritual, community devastation, we wanted to make a video about this. It's not an ad campaign, but, and by the way, to whomever said, is there an intro that Viva doesn't screw up? I've been on a roll these days. I didn't screw up this intro. The content of that tweet did, because I had it on incognito, but apparently that interview, that ad campaign, Twitter finds to be adult subject matter, and you need to be logged in to view it. So I had to go log in to get the ability to play that clip. How do you not feel like the world is going crazy and crumbling around you when you hear stuff like this? Go listen to the interview. The link is in the tweet, and I'll share the link now. And I would suggest that everyone goes and listens to that interview because it might not be up there for much longer. Simon's All is Beauty interview. I'm gonna give it to everybody so everybody can watch this. on their own. Julie Caron, All is Beauty. Jennifer, here we go. This is it. You can all go watch this. Listen to the entire thing on your own. I mean, other than the fact that the guy says, why'd you tell the story? Well, we really felt that after 2 years of COVID devastation, we found her inspirational, interesting, and verbal diarrhea. And then you get into the interview itself, and they say, what? She asked him the question. It's a decent question, although I didn't like the way she phrased it. She says, some people are going to say this is a delicate discussion, that you shouldn't be, dipping your toes in this pool. Others might say you are shamelessly exploiting it, and I dare say promoting something that corporate interests have no, I won't say right, they have no business getting involved in. But the interviewer, because she works for the CBC, and they are the propaganda arm of the Liberal government, she says, what do you have to say to the cynics who say that you shouldn't be doing this? Jennifer, it's not cynics who think that this should not be done. It's realists. This is not for branding or corporate gain, but we decided to do it. So if you haven't seen, there's a 30-second clip circulating on Twitter. I went to YouTube and found the original 3-minute video. Here it is. All is Beauty. Oh, it's got 1 million views in a month. I mean, they didn't do it for corporate interests, but my goodness, is it
Dying
ever,
in a
ever
hospital
convenient?
is not what's natural. That's not what's soft. In these kind of moments, you need softness.
I'll give you that as well. I'm not going to play it for moral reasons, but also for copyright reasons. Mostly for moral reasons, because I think it would still be fair use, but I don't care. The 30-second clip had been circulating on Twitter. I went and saw that there's a 3-minute video, and I watched a video and I said, look, if this were the project that the individual in the video who ended her life made, it would be one thing. If she came to Simons and said, look, I want to make this video, fund it. Okay, I could understand that. From the interview, Simons made this video, but the woman in the video, I forget her name, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I have an issue with names, and everybody knows that. They said Simons made the video because they wanted to shed light on this. They thought it was a story that needed to be told. She had full veto power. She had full creative control. And the interviewer says, how did she like the video? She saw the final product before she ended her own life. And Peter Simons said she liked it. She had full creative control, but we made this movie. It's not even as though an individual says, I want to tell my story. I don't have the means to do it before my final day. Can you sponsor it? It's shameless exploitation at worst. And it's corporate indoctrination. Let me rephrase. Shameless exploitation at best. And it's corporate indoctrination at worst. And I want to specify something out there for everybody. I do believe in one's ability to choose to end their own life. I do. Under certain conditions. I'm not against euthanasia in the proper sense. When people find out they are terminally ill, but for a miracle or for an act of God, they're terminal, scientifically, medically terminal. These days, there's been enough distrust sown in the medical community that I would rely on a miracle from God with, not as much certainty. If you're diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, statistics are statistics. I am not, I do believe in the ability for someone who is terminally ill with no prospect of treatment, who doesn't want to die in a hospital, to respectfully, humanely end their life. That's not where we're at in Canada anymore. We're at in Canada, 2021, 10,064 people were euthanized. And that is if you trust the numbers. And I don't trust the numbers because I've heard anecdotal evidence that people are being pressured into doing it. I've heard anecdotal evidence direct from sources who just don't want to yet come public. They're being pressured into it, and they're not terminally ill. And now in Canada, as of March, when the sunset provision on prohibiting euthanasia, state-sanctioned termination of life for the mentally ill, when that sunset clause fades into the sunset, oh, we're going to go from 10,064 in 2021. We're going to break new records in Canada. That interview was shocking, more shocking than the project. Yeah, after 2 years. There is a big difference between compassion and convenience. You know, I'm not against it. I'm not milquetoast. I have very reasonable and very defensible positions on gun control, on abortion, on euthanasia. Some people will call me a fence sitter. Some will call me too far to one side. Another will call me a liberal nutcase. Depends on who's asking. But I'm not against it. But it should be the last resort. And like Chet Chisholm says, not an act of convenience because they can't get proper housing. They have allergies. These are actual cases in Canada. And they can't find adequate, affordable housing. And the government authorizes their euthanasia. There's another word for that. Yeah. Soldiers with PTSD calling up for support, getting recommended MAID, medical assistance in dying. There's another word for that. Oh, it was an accident for which Justin Trudeau apologized. And yet they're legalizing euthanasia for the mentally ill as of next year when that provision, when that restriction under the law fades into the sunset. So that's the latest on that ad. There's context to it, and the context makes it even worse. After 2 years of devastation, how many more people are going to be inclined to say, I can't stand this world anymore? It's too painful for me. And hey, look, the government makes it painless and convenient. And hey, from the government's perspective, they'll save some money on Medicare. They'll save some money on the system. From another perspective, hey, geez, there'll be markets for body parts, organ donors. It's great. You know, in China, it's a little different. In Canada, they found a humane way of satisfying the need for that market. Okay, I've given myself a stomach ache again. So sorry, today's schedule was a little bit off because I met with Phil Demers today. Phil Demers, for those of you who don't know, the Walrus Whisperer. Let me see if I can just pull up the picture. Here we go. Yeah, it's right here. I'm going to go share. Phil Demers was on the channel, I guess it was like a couple of years ago now. He's the whistleblower for Marineland, who then got sued by Marineland. And I've been so out of that news that I didn't realize his story had, I don't know if it's a happy ending, but Marineland, after nearly or more than a decade of litigation, dropped the lawsuit against Phil Demers. He was in Miami at a protest down at the Miami Seaquarium over the weekend that I tried to get to, but I had family obligations that prohibited it. Protesting a whale that's in captivity at the Miami Seaquarium, out of commission, so not open to the public, sitting in a frickin' tank. Not even turning in circles. There's barely enough room. Raising awareness for that, but his lawsuit, he blew the whistle on Marineland, landed him, his girlfriend in litigation that lasted nearly a decade. They dropped the suit in September. Under one of the conditions was that he get his reunion with Smushy the Walrus. From what I understand, they blew the reunion, and he wants a proper reunion that he was promised, that he was contractually guaranteed. So his saga's not yet over, but in as much as a decade of litigation is over, it's over. So he was in Miami. We had bubble tea at my favorite bubble tea place, right near Gumbo Limbo Turtle Sanctuary, where we went and we saw some turtle sanctuary. So that's why busy during the day, but it was good to see Phil again. And man, he looked good. You know, the stress of litigation, nobody understands the toll that it takes on you until you get involved in it. And then you understand the toll that it takes. Now, before we go any further, you probably saw the little warning. This this video contains paid sponsorship, because it does. From my sponsor, product that I use, I keep it on my desk, Field of Greens. It is not a supplement. It is not an extract. It is powdered greens, desiccated greens. Power of fruits, power of vegetables, powdered up, so you get all of the good. I don't want to screw it up. Full serving of vegetables per spoonful. Full serving of fruit, antioxidants, power, boosted immunity. It is not an extract. It is not a supplement. It's a food. USDA organic, made in America. 1 spoonful is 1 full servings of fruits and vegetables. Most people do not know you're supposed to have 4 to 5 or 5 to 6 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. Most people don't have them. I have them, but I also like to have an extra spoonful. It's an extra glass of water in my case to make sure I hydrate and, get rid of bad habits. I just stuffed my face full of actual arugula before doing the stream. But everybody who's into bad habits can get into healthy habits. 1 spoonful, one serving of fruits and vegetables twice a day. It's good. If you go to fieldofgreens.com, it brings you to Brickhouse Nutrition. Promo code Viva gets you 15% off your first order and 10% off all subscriptions. Good company, something I actually use, and I take pride in using it, and I take pride in sponsoring it, and I'm very proud that they sponsor me. The hinged, fringed minority with unacceptable views. So, what do we do? Canada is going the way of China, and it's no longer hyperbole. It's not hyperbole. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not blowing it out of proportion. We saw 6 weeks, 43 days of the Emergencies Act inquiry in Canada. Justin Trudeau testified last Friday. It was a very, very frustrating day for me to watch, because you all know what I think of Justin Trudeau. I loathe him as a politician. I presume that he's similar as a human. Someone cannot be that loathsome of a politician and still be a good human. It's not possible. But I don't know him personally. I loathe him as a politician. I loathe him so much as a politician. He got me to run for office against his buddy in westbound NDG, Mark Garneau. I ever wanted to run for office? That's how much I loathe him. As much as I loathe him, I watched his testimony Friday, and it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad in that he made good arguments. He just didn't come off as a liar. He didn't come off as disingenuous. He didn't come off as the way he needed to come off as. It might have been through strategy. It might have been through design. When you have 2 hours to tell your story with the most softball leading questions from a friendly counsel who's probably looking for some appointment later on in life, it's easy to come off good. When you have 5 minutes or 10 minutes in cross-examinations by your staunchest adversaries, it's tough to make someone look bad in 10 minutes. It is. Oftentimes when you're breaking someone down in deposition, and I had, only 12 plus years of doing this, it takes time to break them down. It takes time to break someone down because you've got to build up trust to some extent. And then you've got to let them, make their own beds. You got to lay the trap and let them walk into it when you know that they're going to walk. 10 minutes? 10 minutes is nothing. And some of the cross-examinations only had 5 minutes. He lied under oath. Good luck proving something a lie and not his opinion. I never called people names. Okay, well, that's an opinion. Anti-vaxxer is not a name, it's a fact. Misogynist is not a name, it's a fact. I'm not trying to make fun of everybody who says this. You have to understand, you might think and you might know that he knows he was not telling the truth, but a lie is intent. A lie is not being wrong. A lie is not having an opinion that differs from your own. A lie is knowing that you're saying something that's false, despite its falseness, or knowing that you're saying something despite having no good reason to believe in the truthfulness of it. When he says, let's just take one example. Put in the chat what do you think the other lies were. I never called anybody names. That's not a lie if you believe that calling someone a racist is not calling them a name, it's an assessment of a state of fact. Don't like it. I'm not asking you to like the argument. That's the argument. Deep breaths. Matters of fact that he might have lied about, such as, I don't know, I can't. But he didn't come off as bad as he needed to, and it is a problem. But we witnessed him actually, nothing less than turning Canada into China. Listen to this. This is the highlight. Highlights. This is the highlight of all highlights, and I'll tell you the punchline after this. We've all seen it, but enjoy it one more time.
Using protests to demand changes to public policy is something that I think is worrisome.
Using protests to demand change to public policy is something that you find worrisome.
Sorry, to a certain
That's the definition of a dictator.
Protest, if you're out protesting that the government is, shutting down.
Just want you to see something. Like I was answering a question, and then I heard what I heard, and it's not like just my face.
Using protests to
right now. Here,
demand
there you go.
Changes
just
to
went off
public
my head.
policy.
Oh, look at that.
Is something that I think is worrisome.
Using protests to demand change to public policy is something that you find worrisome.
Sorry, to a certain.
He said it, and it wasn't a joke. He said it, and the softball examiner-in-chief, her name was Chaudhry. That's it. Just let that slide, Chaudhry. You want that political appointment in a year or two? Let it slide. I can't believe he just said that. Ignore it, move on, never come back to it. Literally turning Canada into China. And I have to bring up a joke. Like, public protest to affect policy change is something that he finds worrisome. Unless it's protests in India.
India today called in Canada's High Commissioner to complain about remarks that you made about the farmers' protests in that country. There's warnings that you've damaged relations between India and Canada. I'd like to get your response to that.
Canada will always stand up for the right of peaceful protest anywhere around the world, and we're pleased to see moves towards de-escalation and dialogue.
De-escalation and dialogue. He proudly supports protest anywhere in the world and looks forward to dialogue. He doesn't support protest in Canada, and he does not dialogue with protesters in Canada. The man is a walking hypocrite, a walking tyrant, living, breathing political evil. And yet, he just says it, and then and that's it. Nobody says anything more to it. I made a meme, and the sad thing is that it's not really a meme. It's just a political joke, and the sad part is that within a year or two, collective memory being what it is, no one's going to get the joke. Check this out. I'm so punny. Punny. Where is it? Here. That's President Xi of China. And for those of you who don't know, in China right now, there are massive public protests against I'll say draconian, but I'll also say inhumane communist lockdown restrictions and measures. This is President Xi saying using protests to demand changes to public policy is something that I think is worrisome. And in a year's time, people are not going to know that Trudeau said it, and people are going to actually think that President Xi said it. Have you noticed that Justin Trudeau, he supported the protests in India. He has been eerily silent on the protests in China, just oddly not saying a damn word about it. Oh, yeah, no, it's okay. Let's read some chats before we get into how Canada has gone downhill. Because you all thought, by the way, before I get to that chat, last week on Friday, I was listening to the closing statements by Commissioner Rouleau as I was jogging on a treadmill, and it was painful listening to that while I'm jogging. But Rouleau said, "This ends the fact-finding portion. I now believe I have enough facts to come to my determination. Next week is the policy, and it's going to be written submissions." I thought that's what he said. I didn't know that they were going to be airing this week as well, the public discussion on policy. And I'm listening to it today because it was brought to my attention it's there. And I can't believe what I'm listening to. It's like they're nonchalantly, publicly discussing turning Canada into China. But we'll get there after I do some super chats. Jennifer from that video had non-terminal Ehlers-Danlos syndrome with flexible joints, translucent skin that bruises easily. Shameful exultation. I did not know that. Thank you very much, STFU FFS. And for anybody who doesn't know what that acronym means, Google it. Chet Chisholm, Brett Weinstein in the latest Dark Horse podcast commented that he knows of people in the death care industry who have seen those fibrous clots too. We're going to get to that. I'm not denying it. I'm not denying that. Stu Peters died suddenly, has done a very good job not vetting its material so that it can now be easily discredited. We'll get there. I'm going to keep that one highlighted. Ho from Australia. I think you meant, hey, actually got the notification in time this time. Booyah, Harry Dairyman. Nice to see you. A maid helps you clean. I find this troubling. You and Forbes magazine, who drew the analogy between this policy and Nazi-era mercy killings. Not on Rumble, ain't giving anyone my freaking phone just for Rumble rants. About this topic, why the hell did we sacrifice the last 2 years for? So the surviving elderly now go kill themselves. I know what you mean. Ford, Fair and Frozen, Fair Frozen 55. Thank you, Simons, for inspiring me to never shop at Simons. Seize the day. How you doing, Seize the Day? I met Seize the Day in Ottawa, live in person. It's a very nice meeting people in person. I almost died today. I called my wife and not 911. Kyle Kramer. Okay, what do we got? Pasha Moyer, struggling to understand. This woman was so beside herself. She wanted to end her life, but she had the wherewithal to act as an editor on this video. I can understand that. She wants to, I did not know that she was suffering from a non-terminal illness. And healthcare is so shitty in Canada that, they can't get the care they need, so life is misery. Welcome to Equality for All, a shitty healthcare system for everyone. Sorry, I swore. Did you see Steve Lito video on Canada Unexplained Wealth Order? Do you mean death order? If you don't want to explain where money comes from, they auto-assume criminal and take. Oh, no, we'll get there in a second. I'm not your buddy guy. It saddens me when I tell others these events. They say, why do you care? It doesn't immediately affect your rights now. I loathe Trudeau as a human. No respectable human would say and do what he has done. And that is from Ashray. Well, let's just get back to turning Canada to China before we go over to Rumble. So I was watching as much as the commission as I could today, and I'm hearing these things. It will end up on InfoWars. It will end up on InfoWars because it's the stuff of conspiracy theory, but they're saying it out loud and nobody's listening. And those who are listening, the ones that care, and the ones that have given up, well, what's the big deal? Then I just won't go to protests if the government can freeze my bank accounts if I'm there after they tell me to leave. Leave and desist. Oh, you're still here 2 days later? We're going to freeze your assets. And don't take my word for it. I don't know who the players are by name yet.
So, Gerard, you said that for people who were outside and who wanted to come back to Ottawa to have some fun and demonstrate, it could have been sufficient to say, well, if you come back or if you come, your bank account could be frozen.
Yeah, just like that.
Or your credit cards. For people who were already there, maybe not. And then how do we do to identify them? But if we had said, listen, someone will be there to ask the names of the people in some perimeter, and then we would have the list of all the people present at such a date, and if they're still there, 48 hours from now, we will give the order to financial institutions to block their assets or their bank account. Would that be acceptable, for example?
Let's just laugh, people. Let's just laugh as there's an open discussion about turning our country into China. And yes, Canada is still my country. Well, it was an emergency. You didn't leave after 48 hours? Well, let's just freeze all your bank accounts. Oh, it's so funny. That's an open discussion that they're having. If people are protesting and you tell them to go home and they don't, and then you can declare it an emergency and then freeze their bank accounts. And they go, I mean, the thing is, I'm listening to this off my phone and I have to try to make you can't rewind, by the way, off the commission website. So I have to record endlessly just so I can capture these moments when they happen. And I mean, there was more context to this. Like, I have a feeling that I might want to stream this all day so I can rewind it on YouTube. They are literally saying, well, if it's an emergency, and people show up to protest after they're told not to go, well, then we can freeze their bank accounts. Is that what problems do we see with that, Bernard? Let me ask you the question to field it from here. Oh, and then listen to this. So while they're just casually talking about, no due process because it's an emergency, no legal standards because it's an emergency, no checks and balances because it's an emergency. Where the hell is it? I had the follow-up. I had the answer to it. Maybe I didn't get the answer. Is this the answer? This might have been the answer here. Oh, this is another one. Just listen to this one.
If you have foreign entities, I assume if there is a crowdfunding platform somewhere in the world, or a crypto exchange, or a crypto wallet service, whatever they call themselves, you don't necessarily know or even care who's your clients, right? Especially if where you're physically located, at least legally, there is no requirement for, know your clients information. You may not know that, this person's from Canada. You may not even know that you have technically, now that you have someone who has put money on your platform or donated money to your platform or is going to receive money from your platform, that you should be registered. So first of all, it's very difficult for an entity like FinTrack to actually scour the world to find out.
They're talking about requiring you to register if you take or accept foreign funds.
The second thing is, even if that were possible, say, hey, you're not registered, so now you have to register. And then,
who's this going to apply to? Commentators who might get crowdfunded?
Platform, crowdfunding, crypto is not registered. Then what? What happens? Does FinTrack say,
freeze their bank accounts?
Registered, you're not complying, we're going to shut you down? Well, that's not going to happen, especially if that platform is not in Canada. They can't really do that.
Can't shut them down. But what can they do? What can they do? Bill C-11? Anybody?
Can you block a website?
Yes.
An actual IP address?
Yes.
From this platform, say now Canadians no longer have access to that?
Have we heard of Bill C-11, sir?
Is that, and is that possible, or what is the process for doing that? And then
it's not only possible. What is the process? It's in the process right now. Regulate the internet the way the government regulates television and radio under Bill C-11.
Even if you could do that, then what isn't there in this platform might just say, okay, well, now we're blocked here. We'll just create another IP address where people can go and do the same business they were doing before. And then you have to go through the whole process. And this kind of cat and mouse. So the big question is, even if we want to have this level of registration, disclosure, transparency, compliance, is it even possible, feasible? So I see Michel, who's now kind of wants to say a lot of things.
Is it even possible? There is nothing that the government will not say is not possible if it allows them to have more powers. They're literally talking about passing Bill C-11 right now, which would regulate the internet, which would downgrade, demote certain content that is undesirable. It might even allow blocking or restricting access to certain content. Who is it? I don't know the guy's name, but these are the panelists on the commission discussing policy. I don't know who it is by name or reputation. I didn't know this was going on today, and I wasn't planning on getting involved in it. But then someone, luckily in a comment, told me, like, Viva, did you know that they're broadcasting this and they're sitting around talking about turning Canada into China, and it's shocking? I wanted to bring up one of the answers, but I don't seem to have it. Give me 2 seconds. It was the answer to the first question. And wait until you hear the answer. I'm going to give myself an L, sir. That's not the... Oh, that might have been the answer. Yeah, here's the answer. Okay, got it. Good. Get it? Got it. Good. And then after this, we're going to move over to Rumble. Everyone here, here's the link to Rumble. It's pinned in the top. It's pinned, people. Go start. You can make your way over there if you're so inclined to support over on Rumble. Please, thank you. Okay, here we go. Listen to this. This was the answer. People, the guy might have a speech impediment, so don't make fun of the speech impediment. That discredits legitimate criticism. Listen to the words, not the delivery of the words. And the words are horrifying.
We would have the list of all the people present at such a date.
Here, this is when they're
And
talking
if
about
they're
freezing
still
bank
there,
accounts.
48
We'll get a list, you see. And if the people who we got on the list have not left the protest after whatever time the government says the protest comes to an end, we can then go tell their banks to freeze their accounts. That's the question.
hours from now, we will give the order to financial institutions to block their assets.
We will give the order as if this is now just like a tool in the box. This is unlawful, unconstitutional. You have courts for a reason. Freezing a bank account, you can get by way of a Mariva injunction. Freezing a bank account, you can get through the ordinary courses of due process. But now, Trudeau has broken the seal, the proverbial seal. He's shattered the glass. Now, they can talk about issuing an order to freeze bank accounts in the absence of a conviction, in the absence of charges, in the absence of any due process. It's within their purview now, just because it's been done once.
Or their bank account. Would that be acceptable, for example? Well, I will answer in English because I want to be as precise as possible.
Yeah, be precise, please.
Well, is it okay? Let's in times of crisis.
Look at how happy these people are. They're sitting around discussing other people's lives and livelihoods, like they're the philosophers of our time. Listen to the answer. In times of crisis.
Is it okay? Let's in times of crisis, traditional rules of procedural fairness can be modified. We have to accept that.
Modify. We can modify traditional rules of fairness. In times of crisis is when traditional rules of fairness need to be fortified, not modified.
Always have gold-plated.
You know why? Because then it just incentivizes the government to call crisis whenever it wants to modify traditional rules of fairness. Wrong. Ass backwards, carriage in front of the horse. Times of crisis is when you make sure the rule of law, fundamental rights are respected, not modified.
We have to accept that we can't always have gold-plated process going on here. So in that sense, to some extent, a hammer is, I'm not completely opposed to it. Where I think it becomes more problematic.
By the way, because the previous question, they were talking about using a hammer to kill a fly, a sledgehammer to kill a fly, where one of the panelists, who seems to have half a constitutional brain to her, said, it's not because something was effective that it becomes justified. You know, you can kill the cancer by killing the patient. It's not because it was effective at killing the cancer that it's justified or the proper course of action. You can use a sledgehammer to kill a fly, but because it managed to kill the fly doesn't mean it was the proper justifiable method. You can use a hammer to kill a sledgehammer to kill a fly, but it doesn't really work. You know the analogy. But the fly swatter was the appropriate response. This guy here says, hey.
I'm not completely opposed to it. Where I think it becomes more problematic is how did the banks know whose accounts to freeze?
Well, the government tells them.
And if they felt they made a mistake, like what sort of disincentive is there on the
None.
bank to not do it? How do they know the person didn't leave? The fact that there wasn't a centralized authority is a little bit of a problem as well here.
Centralized authority. They want to make a bank freezing czar of the government as the centralized authority to, tell the banks, you're good, you can do it.
The fact that there was no challenge after the fact is a bit of a problem as well. Like going only for efficaciousness, this may very well have been efficacious, and therefore, in some cases, I'm I'm not going to argue that it wasn't efficacious or that it wasn't even justified in particular situations. I think the problem arises, as you noted, it was implicit in your question, that we don't know how the banks made this decision. We don't know if the banks did it with someone who actually got the message and left. And that's where the lack of any individual protection is a bit problematic. And look, in an emergency, some of this is someone's going to fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
But the lack of any
For the greater
kind of
good.
ability
For the greater
to challenge, the lack of any kind of way to say, no, I left, I got the message, and the bank had no incentive to accept it. Like the person could go into their bank account in Toronto and say, look, I'm back, but
I'm
the
good.
bank
I'm good.
wasn't
Forgive me.
obliged,
Forgive me,
or had
bank.
no incentive to take it off per se. That's where I think it becomes slightly more problematic.
That's where it becomes problematic.
Perspective.
Not in doing it. It becomes problematic where the bank doesn't undo it afterwards. Forget about the fact that it might affect someone's credit at large. It's happening before our eyes for us to see, but people are too busy with their daily lives. It's not everybody who has the luxury, or I will say the burden, of doing this day in and day out. I sit there listening to this, pulling my hair out, getting my stomach in knots. But other people don't have time. They have real jobs. They have as much family as I do. They have as much obligations as I do. And they don't have time to know about it, and they barely have time to care about it if they do. What's my purpose here? Hey, you can't say the information was not there. As you know, the ship is sinking, it's on fire. The fact that you're sleeping with earplugs, I guess you can't say that you didn't have access to the information for now. And pretty soon, you might not actually have access to the information, depending on where you are. I was walking the dog yesterday, and someone spotted me and said, closet fan, good to meet you. And I was sitting there, I had my glasses off on my thing, so I can't see, I was reading some stuff that Barnes had sent me. And so I'm always nervous that someone's going to think I'm being rude. But if my glasses are off, I can't see faces. But I oftentimes don't have my glasses off, except when I'm reading on my iPhone. I'm getting so old. 40, how old am I? 43 and a half. I have to take my glasses off to read up close now. Yeah. All right, let's do this now. Speaking of railing against the system, let's go to Rumble. For those of you who don't mind, and for those of you who do, I hope you understand the reason for which this is the order. Rumble is, I almost pulled up my camera plug. Rumble is what, hold on, what is it? Don't miss my last super chat, mon frère. Hold on one second. I didn't even mean to bring that comment up, but where's the super chat? I think I start it before we leave. Hold on. Scrolling. Here we go. This one. Canadian and their friggin' nuclear option of the notwithstanding clause. Notwithstanding obscene fascism, we arbitrarily implement Canada's paradise. Oh, I went to bring up Nature Lover, who said you're a youngster. Brett Weinstein. Okay, I got that. And psych meds for the unvaccinated in Canada. T or F. True or false? Discussed. Seize the day. I did discuss it. It's true with a but or false with an and. It's, which way do I want to do this? It's false with a but or true with an and. The recommendation or the document was talking about people who have an actual fear of needles, a fear of vaccines, or who might have anxiety to get the Rona jab despite the desire to get it. The idea, like, I want to go skydiving, but I can't bring myself to do it. Well, someone will say, take a shot of whiskey and it'll make it easier. That type of, if people have serious vaccine hesitancy, you can consider treating them with anti-anxiety, psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. It wasn't as though people who are radically against the vaccine have mental illness and should therefore be medicated. I can see how people interpreted it that way. And having seen the way things can get abused, I can see how it could be interpreted that way later on. But it wasn't to say, if you say I'm not getting it ever again because I have now seen the studies, and I don't want it, and you're not going to make me take it. That's not what it was talking about. What it was sort of describing was someone with a generalized anxiety to vaccines, needles, potentially at large, who wants to get it, but they're so nervous. Calm them down, and they'll be able to do what they want to do with their bodies despite their anxieties. That's how it was drafted, but I can see how people interpret it the other way. Speaking of problematic interpretations, let's carry this over to Rumble. Died suddenly. Has been fact-checked, and there's a problem, and we'll talk about it in 3 seconds on Rumble alone, ending on YouTube. 3,196 people still here. See you on the dark side, Flipmeisters. See you on the flip side, Dude Meisters. Removing from YouTube. 3, 2, 1, now.